Growing up, I was bullied. So much so that I can even remember the names of who my bullies were in elementary and middle school. Errol Anderson, Eric Schreier, Josh Jump, Josh Herrick, just to name a few. High school got worse, if you can imagine that. Usually it was groups of bullies, and oftentimes it involved a trash can and my underwear. I might get censored for that comment about my underwear, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. One of the things that I took away from all of that bullying, and now mind you, I was probably the smallest person in any given sport at any given time. I was the runt. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got bullied as much as I did, because I was just the easiest kid to pick on. And in that, I had to figure out some way to defend myself because I wasn't able to defend myself physically. And mind you, most of my bullies were attacking me physically, in addition to just making fun of me because I had glasses and I had these huge elephant like ears growing up. Oh my gosh, the pictures. I may post one just to show you. And it didn't get better at all. And so, effectively, for probably the better portion of 11 or 12 years of my formative growing up, I was bullied like nobody's business. And I figured out ways to cope. And my parents even had to step in at certain points in time. In fact, I recall a conversation that my dad has shared with me a number of times now that he's gotten older about my English teacher, Andrea Perry, in high school. She actually called my parents up and she was genuinely concerned because of the cystic acne, and you can see some of the scarring. She said, I'm concerned about Tim's mental health and well-being, mainly because the kids are just being relentlessly mean to him. And my dad assured her that I was a lot tougher than what I let on, and that I was probably going to be one of the most resilient adults anybody could possibly imagine, and that she should be more concerned about the other children's behavior towards me than my ability to take the punishment. And by that, I mean, it wasn't literal punishment. It was just punishment. So what happens when we grow up and we become somebody who's in a leadership position, demonstrating leadership behavior? And ultimately, those habits that served us well from a defensive standpoint as a child no longer serve us from a defensive standpoint as an adult. In fact, what used to be an asset becomes a liability. Well, in my particular case, what happened was I ended up having to go through counseling, a lot of counseling, and even a 12-step recovery program because, this leads to significant challenges with relationships and becoming codependent, picking fights for the purpose of picking fights. So as leaders, when we're able to step away from whatever that environment is that may have forged us, we have an opportunity to reflect and go, do these habits, do these defensive mechanisms, do these ways that I cope serve me well? And if they don't, then there's ways to get that fixed. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but what I am at this point especially is transparent. My behavior, what I learned, how the armor I built up in order to survive oftentimes, not even thrive, it didn't serve me, and it doesn't serve me today the way that it did, at least for a short period of time, to protect me from the worst of it early on. And mind you, my parents were loving and continue to be loving parents. My mom and dad weren't perfect. We didn't have a model upbringing at home, but they were together and they loved us and cared about us as their children, both my sisters and I. Leaders get an opportunity, especially in adulthood, to really rethink those behaviors that they carry on with and those that they just need to set aside. So you do a little bit of self-reflection and figure out whether or not the way you act, the way you respond, the way you react, if that's actually being effective for you today, now, as an adult, as a leader.